الله يا الله يا الله الله يا الله يا الله كن حافظا لنا وكن معينا الله يا رحمن يا رحيم الله يا غفور يا شكور الله يا حي ويا قيوم الله يا حنان يا منان كن حافظا لنا وكن معينا كن حافظا لنا وكن معينا.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome back to Isria's Pod, where we are now in Season 4, Unwritten Layers. I know, it's been a minute. All I'm going to say is Ramadan just ended. So therefore, I am going to use that as an excuse of why I've been MIA. But also, it's the truth. I was trying to maximize my ibadah as much as possible, and so I literally had quit everything, and I was like, deuces to everybody. And alhamdulillah, I have understanding people in my life, and so I hope you guys can also understand why I had to lock in. I feel like there should be no further explanation needed, but yeah, with that being said, Ramadan Kareem and Eid Mubarak. I hope you guys all had a wonderful Ramadan and a wonderful Eid, and even if you felt that you weren't at your fullest potential, which low-key I felt like I might have been slacking some nights, we did the best we could. And may Allah bring us to next Ramadan, Ameen, so that we can do even better. Now, before I start, my usual reminder that I am by zero means an ustada, an alima, or a scholar, nor a doctor of any kind. I am just a girl who reflects on what I learn, what I live, and what Allah uncovers inside of my mind. And everything I share is, of course, always a reminder to myself first, before it is ever advice to anyone else. I don't want you guys to think, she says that, but I was just talking to her the other day and she was saying she was struggling with that. Let's relax. This is also for me too. I'm just a girl in the world or something. I digress. SubhanAllah, I feel like Ramadan flew by, I blinked and it was gone. And I was like, where did everything go? There are things that I feel like we know how to say, and then there are things that we have never really found the language for. And Ramadan really kind of opens that door up for us, right? But what then after that? There are the words we use in conversation, the explanations we give people, the polished versions of our feelings, and then there's that other place inside us where things sit without neat sentences. A place where hurt does not always come out as hurt. Sometimes it comes out as anger. Sometimes it comes out as distance. And sometimes it's us overthinking, people-pleasing, shutting down, trying to control everything, or trying to disappear before anyone can reject us. Been there, done that. And a lot of the times, we don't realize that what we're calling personality may actually be pattern, where we think, oh my gosh, I'm just a girl, it's just for funsies, I'm just a troll. Really, that can be a bad habit that we might need to break. Cough, cough, me. I feel like I do be saying that often enough. And I'm clocking myself before I clock you guys. What we are calling pattern may actually be pain. And inshallah, over Ramadan, we were able to kind of recognize that with shaitan locked away. Like, yo, what is in my heart? Let me turn to Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim, the most merciful, to really open up and see what's going on. Now that Ramadan is over, however, we need to have that same momentum of wanting to open up and pray that Allah protect us from the waswas, the whispers of shaitan, and anything that may distract us. We gotta lock in, guys. It's the big 2-6. Hello. It's not the new year, but it basically is after Ramadan. My years, they go from Ramadan to Ramadan, not even like January to January, but now I'm like, new year, new me? No. Freshly out of Ramadan. Who dis? What am I doing? I gotta lock in. I digress. I feel like a lot of us know how to manage ourselves better than we know how to understand ourselves. We know how to keep going, how to show up, how to answer messages, fulfill obligations, smile when needed, and move through a day even when our chest feels so heavy. And we know how to keep things functional, right? We'll be able to say, oh, it's fine, I'm fine, because saying it's actually not fine, and I don't even know where to begin, can feel like so much, too much. We know how to call ourselves dramatic before anyone else does, where we're like, oh my gosh, let me not overreact. I need to relax. We know how to minimize our own feelings so that we do not become inconvenient. Oh, sorry, I'm in your way. Let me just move out the way. So sorry to bother you. We know how to translate our exhaustion into productivity, because at least if we're useful, we can justify our presence. And after a while, living like that starts to feel normal. You stop noticing that you've not really checked in with your own heart. You have just been managing the traffic around it. Ramadan really kind of opened my eyes when it comes to that, where I was like, yo, no socials, no mobile games, nothing to distract me, no shows, no nothing. One of the things that has stood out to me in both the spiritual and emotional conversations that I've been reading in both Purification of the Heart by Hamza Yusuf, as well as Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents by Lindsay Gibson, is that people often focus on what is visible first. Who is people? We are people. The reaction, the argument, the bad habit, the shutdown, the conflict, inconsistency. But what is the heart? What is visible is usually not the beginning. It's usually the overflow, right? In Islam, the heart is treated as the root from which the rest of a person's life grows. Al-qalb, there's a reason Allah mentions it in the Quran. There's a reason why we make dua for our heart. Actions are not random, and character is definitely not superficial. What appears outwardly is really connected to what is happening inwardly, which is why the scholars of purification treat the heart as something that must be examined, protected, and cleaned again and again and again. There is a reason why we keep coming back to Allah. Hamza Yusuf's commentary really keeps returning to that idea, that singular focus, that society's outward corruption is rooted in what is wrong inwardly, and that purification is not a one-time event, but an ongoing process of tending to the heart. This doesn't mean that after we talk about these things, we're like, okay, we've had these conversations, I now know what's wrong, I can go about my life and live just fine. No, tomorrow I have to remind myself of these exact same thoughts, words, really absorb what I'm learning, what I'm speaking on, or what I'm hearing from these books, and put that into my life for the rest of my life. Practice what I'm listening to, what I'm learning. And when you start to take these things seriously, you stop asking questions like, why did I react like that? Ugh, I could have done better. And rather, you start asking, what is sitting underneath that reaction? Why did I react like that? Like, really genuinely, what was behind it? Because nothing appears out of nowhere. The way you respond, things that trigger you, the things that linger in your mind longer than they should, they're all connected to something deeper. There are moments where you're just trying to get through your day and everything feels heavier than it should. Literally been there, done that. You're tired, maybe physically, emotionally, or even both. You're already carrying things you've not fully processed, allowed yourself to really sit down with, and then something small happens, and it shifts everything. You feel irritated, overwhelmed, on edge, and part of you knows that that reaction is bigger than the situation in front of you. But in that moment, you don't have the space to unpack it. All you can do is feel it. I feel like I was tested in this way during Ramadan, where I really was like, is this who I am? I thought I got better. Why am I so upset by these things? And then later, when everything calms down, you start to see it differently. You realize that it wasn't just that one moment. It was the buildup. There were things that preceded what happened. It's not your fault. It was the stress you had been holding in. That might have been low-key your fault. But we live and we learn, we process it, right? It was the pressure of trying to keep everything together, the conversations you avoided, the feelings you pushed aside, the expectations you placed on yourself as well as others. And suddenly your reaction starts making more sense. But it also shows that there is more going on inside of you than you originally thought. There are also moments where people can bring out a version of you that you do not like, where you think that, oh, I'm doing so well, I'm so stable, I've grown so much, I've matured, and then one interaction pulls something out of you that feels so unfamiliar, or maybe even too familiar. You feel yourself getting irritated faster, or shutting down, or becoming defensive, or wanting to escape the situation entirely, and it makes you question yourself. You start wondering if you've actually changed, or if you were just in an environment where nothing was challenging you, where you were content, but maybe a little too content. And sometimes, if you're honest with yourself, you start to notice the patterns in who brings that out of you and who does not. There are environments where you feel lighter, more like yourself, like you don't feel you're constantly bracing for something. And then there are environments that are the opposite, where you feel tense, like you have to be on guard, like you're walking into something that you cannot fully control. Because at the end of the day, you cannot control other people. You can only control how you react, how you are in such situations. And that realization is uncomfortable. It's a difficult conversation to have with oneself, really, because it shows you that not every version of you is coming from your core. Some versions of you are responses and reactions. They were learned in certain spaces, relationships, dynamics. They come out again when you're placed back into those same conditions. There are times where you might feel like you're being pulled into things that you don't even want to be a part of, situations that are not yours, conversations that you did not even start, tensions that existed before you were ever even involved. And you're just there, a spectator, trying to navigate it, trying to stay calm, trying not to react, trying to keep yourself grounded, but internally it still affects you. And you might find yourself thinking, why is this my responsibility? Why do I feel like I have to carry something that I didn't even create? I didn't start this. Why do I feel like I have to manage other people's emotions while I am still trying to manage my own? Hello, I'm an emotional person. I'm working on me. I am trying to empathize, sympathize, understand, and not react. And sometimes that in and of itself is its own singular job. Why am I taking on the burden of other people's emotions? The answer is not simple. Sometimes it can just be that we're placed in a position that we have already learned to do that. This is learned behavior, right? You've learned to adapt, to respond, to keep things from escalating, to hold things together even when it was never our job to do so. But even if something was learned, that does not mean that it has to remain. It can always be unlearned, because part of purification is not just recognizing what's in your heart, but deciding what you want to keep and what you need to let go. There's a concept in Islam that the heart can become clouded, right? Not destroyed, not permanently broken, but covered, shrouded, covered by things that were never meant to settle there long term. And those coverings can come from many, many places. From attachment to people, fear, anger, unresolved hurt, from constantly looking outward instead of inward. And when the heart is clouded, it affects everything. Your judgment, the way you perceive yourself, as well as life and people. It affects how you interpret situations, how you respond, how you worship. It even affects how you see yourself. That is why purification is not just about adding more actions, it's about removing what does not belong. A very common theme when one learns about the deen or learns about Islam, a common phenomenon that we hear is people having issues with having to do this and that and the third. Oh my God, and things can get really overwhelming. But rather than adding things onto your day-to-day life, removing things can actually be easier. The same thing can be said with your heart. It's about noticing the resentment before it becomes part of your character, because now that's a character flaw. There's a chip on your shoulder, and it is not anybody else's job to heal that for you. It's your job to recognize it. It's about noticing the attachment before it becomes dependence, noticing the fear before it controls your decisions. That requires a level of honesty that's not always easy. It requires us to sit with ourselves and admit things that we might not want to ever admit, to acknowledge that, okay, I was affected by that. I can carry certain expectations. There are parts of me that do still need healing. And that doesn't make me weak. It makes me aware. There's something else that I've kind of been thinking about lately, which I've had conversations with friends about. But it's how sometimes we expect people to give us what they were never capable of giving. We hold on to this idea where if we just explain ourselves better, if we just try harder, if we just stay patient long enough, something will change. That we will finally be understood in the way we want to be understood. My friend said this to me that really stuck in my head. She said that you can't hold someone to a standard that they don't know exists. What does that entail? Y'all ever heard that phrase, sense is no longer common? Like, sometimes genuinely that it is how some people are. And that's not your job to fix. Not everyone has the capacity to meet you where you are. And accepting that can be so difficult, because it means letting go of the idea that you can fix something by trying harder. Because now it doesn't matter what I say to this person. If they at their core do not believe that this can be fixed or that it even is a problem, khalas bro, you're cooked. You gotta just let them live their life. It means letting go of the belief that if you just do everything right, the outcome will change. It can feel like you've lost something, but at the same time, it can also feel like a relief. I've started this thing where I now am just like, okay. And it's so hard to be able to say that, because I'm able to say it now, but in those moments, I'm really just squinting my eyes, racking my brain on how to respond to things. And I'm like, you know what? God himself has given people free will. They choose to move the way they do, think the way they think. Who am I to change their ways? I will tell you once, all right, if you cannot pick it up, this is not something that I can teach you, that you have to learn in time in your own life. Why am I going to overexert myself, put myself out? No. I'm good off that. Now, obviously, there's certain things that I'm not opposed to teaching, but at the end of the day, I'm not your teacher until I am. But if you're not my student, I don't know what to tell you, chat. Because once you stop expecting from people what they cannot give, you stop exhausting yourself trying to extract it from them. You're like, all right, I'm going to stop putting myself in the same position over and over again, just praying for a different result. And it doesn't mean that we've stopped caring. It just means that we became more aware of our limits. We have boundaries. We become more aware of what we can carry and what we need to step away from. And that's something that I've been learning slowly, but surely. Not everything needs a reaction. Not everything needs to be fixed. And not everything needs to be held onto. Some things just need to be acknowledged and then released. I gotta let it go. Okay, I see where you're coming from. I'm going to agree to disagree. I'm going to acknowledge what you said and just say, interesting. That's one way to put it, and keep it pushing. And that release is not always immediate. Sometimes it takes time. Sometimes it takes multiple attempts. Sometimes it takes you falling back into the same pattern before you finally step out of it. But every time you become aware, you're a little bit closer. And through all of this, there's something that grounds everything, which is your relationship with Allah. Because at the end of the day, people will fluctuate. Situations will change. Your environment will shift. Your emotions will rise and fall. But Allah does not change. And when your heart begins to anchor itself in that, things start to feel different. Not easier in the sense that life becomes simple, but steadier. You start to realize that not every emotion needs to be acted on. Not every thought needs to be followed. Not every reaction needs to define you. You begin to create space between what you feel and how you respond. And in that space, there is ikhtiyar. There is a choice. The choice to pause. The choice to respond differently. The choice to return to Allah instead of getting lost in what you are feeling and your emotions stuck there. And that return is always available. Never forget that. No matter how many times you feel overwhelmed, no matter how many times you react in ways that you wish you didn't, because God, I wish I didn't. No matter how many times you feel like you're back at the same starting point, you can always return. I really felt that when I was dealt with a situation during Ramadan. I genuinely felt like I was back to square one. My friend literally saw me and was like, Isra, I have not seen you react in this way in a really long time. I was crying, I'll admit it. What I had gone through was so upsetting, and I felt myself mentally regress. I wanted to react the way that I recall reacting in those times when I was going through the same things. The person that had done this to me had grown, and I thought I had grown too, but clearly something's off. They've gone back. Am I going to go back too? Am I really going to let all of my hard blood, sweat, and tears that I put into my mental health, into my emotional state, into who I am, into my deen? Am I going to let all of that go down the drain for what? A reaction? So I gave them the most positive reaction they could ever expect, and I made them laugh. Genuinely, I was so proud of myself after, when I was really deeping it and journaling as I do. I was like, yo, I know that I have progress to make, but I feel like this was a step forward. I was so close to falling backwards off a cliff, but I grabbed on and I was like, no. I'm not going to fall down this cliff. You're not taking me down with you. You want to go down this rabbit hole, this loop-de-loop where we keep coming back in circles. I am going to step out of this circle. You can keep running around chasing your tail, not I, for I will not be there with you. And subhanAllah, I got an apology. I was asked to forgive them, all of these things. And alhamdulillah, of course I did. Not only because it's Ramadan, but especially because it's Ramadan, the month of mercy. If I want mercy from God, why can I not showcase even a little bit of that mercy to others? But also because I was like, I love this person. Genuinely, I do. I've seen growth in both of us. This is not something to ruin our relationship. I will not let it get to that point. Inshallah. May Allah protect me and this person's relationship. I digress. Purification is not about reaching a perfect state and staying there. I was never gonna always be at this peak contentment that I have somehow, some way been striving for so long and felt that I had reached. It's about continuously returning. There are going to be days where I'm tested. I feel like that can be every day. Some months, it can be weeks apart, months apart. But it's about noticing when something is off and realigning myself again. It's about recognizing that your heart needs constant care. The same way your car needs an oil change, so does your heart, but in different ways. And maybe that's the part that we forget often because we expect ourselves to be consistent without tending to what is inside of us. We expect ourselves to feel close to Allah without addressing what is pulling us away. Why do I feel distant to God, but I'm ignoring all of my sins, all of my flaws, all of these things that I'm just kind of sleeping under the rug? Let's clock that. We expect ourselves to be patient without understanding what is making us react. Wow, I really wish I reacted differently in that moment. Gosh, if only I hadn't done that well, okay, let's talk about that then. Let's write that down. Let's acknowledge what the issue is here. Because if we never understand, first step is acknowledging, of course, then understanding what made you react that way, you will then understand the why. Why did I react that way? And once you start looking inwards, not in a way that's harsh or critical, because let's be soft on ourselves the way we hope for others to be soft on us, but in a way that's honest and intentional, things begin to shift. Slowly, you begin to understand yourself more, to see your patterns more clearly, and most importantly, you begin to see how everything is connected. Guys, I promise once you get there, it's flow state. You'll be like, there's no way I've been missing out on this whole time. And sometimes you'll fall out of that flow state. Have you guys ever watched Nemo? This is such a random description, but I want you guys to imagine it as all of those turtles that swim super, super fast and we're Nemo. You join in and then you're going for some time and you've hit flow state. You're like, oh, I'm riding the waves. You're going, and then you get thrown out. And that happens. That's the way of life. But then you pick yourself back up and you put yourself right back in there because that is the way of life. That's flow. You got to keep it going. Your experiences, your reactions, your qalb, your heart, your relationship with Allah. And when you start to connect all of those things, you stop living on the surface. You start living with awareness. And that awareness is what allows you to grow, not just outwardly, but inwardly. And that is where real change begins. You don't notice the way things shift until time passes. The time has shifted. And you're like, yo, low key, I'm no longer the way I used to be. And I pray every day for us to get to that every day that we live. Allahumma ameen. With that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode as much as I enjoyed making it. I will end this off with dua as per usual. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. اللهم اجعل أعمالنا كلها صالحة واجعلها لوجهك خالصة ولا تجعل فيها لأحد غيرك شيئا اللهم اجعلنا من الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر ولا تجعلنا من الذين ضل سعيهم في الحياة الدنيا وهم يحسبون أنهم يحسنون صنعا اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم ربنا واجعلنا مسلمين لك ومن ذريتنا أمة مسلمة لك وأرنا مناسكنا وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار وأدخلنا الجنة مع المتقين مع الأبرار يا عزيز يا غفار برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين ربنا أفرغ علينا صبرا وثبت أقدامنا وانصرنا على القوم الكافرين ربنا لا تؤاخذنا إن نسينا أو أخطأنا ربنا ولا تحمل علينا إصرا كما حملته على الذين من قبلنا ربنا ولا تحملنا ما لا طاقة لنا به واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا أنت مولانا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب رب اجعلني مقيم الصلاة ومن ذريتي ربنا وتقبل دعاء ربنا اغفر لنا ولوالدينا وللمؤمنين يوم يقوم الحساب وأصلح لنا شأننا كله في الدنيا والآخرة. ربنا أتمم لنا نورنا واغفر لنا إنك على كل شيء قدير. وصلى الله على محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين، وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون، وسلام على المرسلين، والحمد لله رب العالمين. اللهم آمين. Thank you all for listening. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.